I'm Liam, and this was my gap year.
I just heard thunder. But if we get we're sending it through the jungle.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of My Gap Year. In this week's episode, I traveled to a small island off the coast of Cambodia to go scuba diving, and later traveled to Thailand, a place I've been wanting to visit for years. Now, to get to this small island, my group and I took a flight from Siem Reap to the city of Sihanoukville, Cambodia. Sihanoukville was really interesting to see because of all the construction going on there. Apparently, Sihanoukville experienced a lot of rapid urban development due to an influx of tourism because of online gambling. However, the Kingdom of Cambodia ended up banning online gambling in late 2019, and this caused roughly 400,000 Chinese nationals with long-term visas to leave. This left Sihanoukville feeling like a ghost town when we arrived. Tons of skyscrapers and hotels being constructed in a completely vacant city. Once we arrived in the harbor, we walked towards our boat, which would take us on a 3-hour trip across the sea to our new home on the island of Koh Rong Sanloem. Another thing I found very interesting during my time in Southeast Asia was the way a lot of their boats were constructed. You'd see these massive, heavy-looking beasts constructed from wooden beams. They seemed as though they could weather even the strongest of storms. This blue boat you see here is owned by the dive shop, and it was going to be our ferry to the island and our dive boat during the days to come. Little did I know I would spend many hours curled up in the fetal position in the pouring rain on this boat, but that's a story for later in this video. For now, I was happy to be on the water in the tropical heat of Cambodia. We made it to the dive boat. Now we have to go across to the island so we can get to our shack where we're going to be staying for the next couple days. Looks pretty cool here. Once we arrived on the island, we hopped in a small motorboat and headed into shore. Here we are. Just pulled up to paradise. Wow. Here I am at Lazy Beach, about to go for a swim. During our time on the island, we were living in a bunkhouse above the scuba shop. We were right next to the ocean, and this provided us with some incredible sunset swims on the beach. Oh yeah, this is prime territory. Woo. Sadly, I didn't film much footage during my time on the island, but after I tell you this story, hopefully you can forgive me. Enjoy this scuba footage while I tell you the tale of my most memorable travel experience to date. Now, the first night went very well for me, but I had been battling some food-related illness for the past week, and I was really hoping it would go away from my stay on the island. Sadly, that was not quite the case. Now, I have no clue how I got this illness, but if you're ever going to do extensive travel, you're going to find out sooner or later, no matter how much caution you take, sickness is inevitable in new environments like these. I made it this far, but eventually the bug caught up with me and I was about to experience the more undesirable aspects of travel. So this story begins right after the first night staying on the island. I woke up early with a couple of my friends to go do yoga before our first day of scuba diving. Now, I'd like to preface this story with a quick warning. If you're currently eating or have a weak stomach, be warned that the details of this story get slightly graphic. Okay, let's begin. Now, prior to this, the only symptoms I had been experiencing was a classic case of traveler's diarrhea, and even though shitting like this sucks, it wasn't enough to ruin my stay on a tropical island or anything. It just made the trips to the bathroom a bit more annoying. The fact that I was living in a bunkhouse with very thin walls and many strangers didn't really make the matters any better, but I digress. So, back to the morning yoga session. All was well and good until about halfway through yoga, when I started to feel my stomach churn. I began to get a terrible sensation that we all know as nausea. But this nausea wasn't just normal nausea. This nausea felt like my stomach was trying to consume itself, and that type of nausea, combined with shitting my brains out every time I went to the bathroom, combined with sweltering tropical heat, did not make things very easy for me. I ended up deciding to take some Dramamine for the boat ride, hoping this would stop the nausea and let me go scuba diving as planned. Now, it worked for a little bit, but after about 15 minutes on the dive boat, rocking in the waves, my stomach decided to take its anger out on me. I then proceeded to hang my head off the side of the boat and convulse like I never had before. All the muscles in my face felt as if they turned to concrete and my eyes started to water. This was terrible. It took a while for my body to return to normal as my friends brought me water to drink and slices of watermelon to try to cheer me up. And after this experience of nausea relief, let's say, that's what happened. My nausea went away. However, the fun didn't stop there. Due to what had just taken place, you can probably guess that I was pretty tired. My body felt dehydrated and out of energy, and to top it all off, my biggest scuba diving fear is having to throw up underwater. Now, as a side note, for those of you who have never been scuba diving, in the case that you would get sick underwater, you're instructed to throw up into your breathing regulator and then purge the materials out of the regulator. Now, although you're not going to die if you have to throw up while diving, this honestly sounds like a nightmare to me, and I will take all precautionary measures to avoid this at all costs. If you didn't already guess, I decided not to dive. And just as I thought I was in the clear, the heavens decided to let loose and it began to storm. Luckily, this was a big boat and there was a space just above the captain's room where I could lay down and sleep away my sickness. So I spent a few long hours sleeping through a rainstorm on a rocking boat in the middle of the ocean while my friends enjoyed their time under the sea. Luckily, the nausea subsided and I did eventually get to dive. And thanks to my instructor Ray shuffling a few dive times around and doing a one-on-one dive with me, I ended up completing my advanced open water course and getting my certification before we had to leave the island, despite the setbacks I had faced earlier. Although the nausea went away, I still dealt with the shitting problems during the rest of our time on the island, but like I said, that was much easier to deal with and I ended up having a great time. On our last night, my friends and I decided it would be a good idea to go skinny dipping in the ocean, and not only is skinny dipping at night in the ocean a pretty crazy thing to do, but also on this island there just happened to be bioluminescence in the water. And let me tell you, swimming naked in a glowing ocean was the most magical thing I have ever experienced, and it was a great way to resolve the turmoil that had previously unfolded. After my very eventful stay in Koh Rong San Loem, my symptoms subsided, finally. And we headed off to our next stop, which was Bangkok, Thailand. Now, Thailand had been a place I had wanted to travel ever since I was 16. Back in high school, I used to watch this guy on YouTube named Austin Augie, who really inspired me to try out this YouTube thing and share my experiences by making films like these. Austin used to make daily vlogs on YouTube and share his journeys from riding his BMX bike around New York City to traveling the world. He ended up going on a trip to Thailand all by himself, and he shared this whole experience on his channel. Ever since I saw those videos, I knew I wanted to see new parts of the world and immerse myself in them like he did. So now, 3 years later, I'm actually doing it. I'm in Thailand. One of the really interesting parts of travel that I didn't expect was how I would feel when I got off the plane in a new country. Before I ever left the US, I always thought that I'd walk out of the airport in a new place and instantly feel a completely different way. New sounds, new smells, new type of heat in the air, new ground to walk on. I thought I would notice some drastic difference, but that's not what happened at all. Every time I got off a plane in a new country, I always felt the same, like I'm here, on Earth. The imaginary lines we draw all over this planet to separate populations, cities, communities, and people are nothing more than just that. Imaginary lines with a few different sets of rules to follow on the other side. We're all here together though. Although we may be born in different places, speak different languages, look different from each other, eat different foods, follow different religions, and have different beliefs, we're all here together. And realizing this, it made me think about how I want to travel in the future. Yeah, seeing all the cool tourist attractions and monuments and beaches and cities is really amazing, but it never compares to the feeling of actually talking to someone who has lived there all their life, to all the normal day-to-day things that people go through all around the world. And it's true, when you hop off a plane in a new country you've never visited before, it might not feel as different as you expected before the trip. However, as soon as you set foot across that imaginary line, your world is now opened up to an entire new set of possibilities, however small they may be. So, as I was in Thailand, living out the dream my 16-year-old self had imagined, that's what I tried my best to do. Live in the moment and notice all the small things. Not the drastic differences that I had expected to notice, but the small differences that you can only understand by being in a new place and discovering it for yourself.
Here. Yeah. Second floor. So we better rush.
Oh.
Yeah, ready.
So cool. We're in the smallest museum in Chinatown in Bangkok. Very interesting.
Actually, we don't have food. I think. Yeah, this means okay, brother. Here art. Okay, two words. Here art. Like art. Where's here art? So they just like live together in one place.
I'm making textiles. It's pretty cool.
Thanks for watching this episode of My Gap Year. Stay tuned for next week's episode where I travel to India to hike the Himalayas and discover one of the 7 wonders of the world. If you enjoy these videos, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. It really helps me out. Also, if you feel my videos bring you value and you'd like to help me follow my passion and continue creating, feel free to become a patron. Check out the link to my Patreon page in the description. Once again, thanks so much for watching.
ไปฟ้าถุงหนึ่งค่ะ
He's playing. Oh, his funeral music. All right, here we are at the top. We made it. The gong behind us. Here we are. All right, let's go. Let's hit this gong and ring it. I'll ring it after you, bro. Yes. Let me ring it here. Here.